Hey guys, Booligan here with Booligan Shooting Sports. Taking a look at a recent acquisition into my firearm collection. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 10-7, but it's not your average Smith & Wesson Model 10-7. This is a PPC Revolver built by Ken Eversull. To talk about this gun and why it is the way that it is, we have to go a little bit back in time. In the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, the primary firearm that a police officer would carry would be, a lot of times, a .38 Special Revolver. So in order to enhance their training and in order to get them more competent with their firearms, they would do practical shooting training. This ended up growing into what was called PPC competitions. So Police Pistol Combat. The name was later changed, the acronym stayed the same, but they kind of changed the name around because maybe associating police with combat, not the best look. But the idea of these competitions were to use service weapon style handguns, so .38 Special Revolvers, and to run them through a practical course of fire at a variety of ranges, usually 7, 25, and 50. And they'd be shooting from different positions, and they'd be shooting usually on B-27 silhouette targets. And absolute precision was required in this. Picture this as like the great granddaddy of, 3-gun competition, except for generally you were only using one gun and it was a revolver, where you were scored not just on your speed on the targets, but you were also scored on how accurately you hit. We're talking you had to be punching out that X-ring on these targets every single time at every single range. So what ended up happening is, you obviously started with standard service revolvers, and then they sort of moved on and got a little bit more Gucci as it goes. Pretty soon you had gunsmiths who were specializing in this competition that were then turning down very precise barrel blanks that were very heavy to reduce that recoil and that muzzle rise so that you could, reduce your split times between your shots. The early sights were fine for the time, but then they're realizing we could do a little bit better. So they started coming up with these ribs that you would add to the top of your revolver, which were then adjustable, obviously, for really precise shooting. But they also had this little slider up here that would allow you to, on the fly, so it's currently set for 7 yards, well, you're moving to the 25-yard field. So you just click it to the middle and it adjusts the sight that you have pre-zeroed in for your ammunition, for your gun. And then when you need to go to the longer range, you just click it back. They later changed this to usually then having the rear sight be set the same way, either toolless or with a tool. You may notice this revolver has a bobbed hammer. This was part of that process because these competitions were run almost exclusively in double action. So you can see we're working with an empty cylinder here. I'm not going to dry fire this a ton because, as you can see, this is not a floating firing pin assembly. This is a standard. The firing pin is attached to the hammer. But these were designed for you to be able to very quickly get accurate double fire or double action shots. And how they did this oftentimes is they would do very, very fine work on these trigger mechanisms so that you could easily stage it. Now, I'm not a pro. I have fiddled around with this gun a lot. I still miss the staging point sometimes, but you can quickly pull it back. And for me, the staging point is a wall about right there, about where my finger touches this grip. And then it's just a little bit extra to go. So you see that next shot, staged, break. Overshot it a little bit there. Stage, break. stage, break. So with a little bit of practice, it's very, very easy to pre-stage that double action trigger, get it right where it needs to be, and then just finish the shot. When we talk about double action trigger pulls with revolvers, usually with revolvers, you're gonna see something like, 10 to 12 pound double action trigger pull, and then maybe a 4 to 5 pound if you single action it. This has a 6 pound double action trigger. It is the smoothest trigger I have ever felt. There's no grit, there's no slop, there's no, creep or take up, there's no weight stacking on it. It's just a smooth pull to that wall and then just a little bit more to break it. This particular revolver was built by Ken Eversull, who is and still is recognized as kind of one of the leaders of this PPC Revolver gunsmithing community. It features an Aristocrat top rail, which has been refinished and all the markings are kind of gone off of it. But it's the name's escaping. It's a Bill Williams design. And he was also very, very good gunsmith for this type of pistol. Originally, when I picked this up, it had some Pac-Me-R grips, which are great, they're fine. However, I really, really am a sucker for blued steel and wood. So I found these new old stock Smith & Wesson Target grips, which are just absolutely fantastic. They fit the look, they fit my hand really well. I've got really big hands, and for this type of shooting, it just fits oh so well. I purchased this gun locally for really a steal. These things were, if you're looking at sort of a modern comparison, this would be something along the lines of a race gun, that you'd currently find. So something like an STI 2011 or something like a Checkmate, except for those are, sort of factory offerings. These weren't. There weren't really any factory offerings that were this good. So what you would see is shops putting these together. You would have police departments putting together their own competitive shooting teams. And then they would, go to world championships. And, these guys were spending a lot of money building these revolvers. But they're obsolete. Obsolete's kind of maybe the wrong word, but it's just not. The PPC is more or less gone. There are some PPC competitions still, largely international, not a ton in the US anymore. But you just don't see these anymore. You don't see this kind of craftsmanship. These guys aren't making them anymore. Ken Eversull doesn't make these anymore. He's kind of exclusively moved on to, I think, bench rifles. He still exists. He's out of Louisiana, and I'd love to have a conversation with him someday about this particular one, to see what his records show about it. But it's just sort of a dead or dying competitive series. It doesn't happen anymore. And as such, you can occasionally find these for not very much money. You can find these things, for around $500-600, when the craftsmanship on them far, far exceeds that amount. This one that I purchased locally came with a complete package, including a whole bunch of speed loaders, which you need to get proficient at because part of the course of fire was often reloads. It included some one HKS and then a bunch of Safari Lands. I prefer the Safari Lands because they're easier to just kind of put in, and then they pretty much automatically dump the rounds in, and then you just kind of click it back up and you're back in business shooting again. It also came with this period correct Reno rain gutter holster. By modern standards, this holster would not be allowed really at any current competition because that trigger is just loud and proud out there. But what these were designed for, so you could have this strap in place and either do a vertical draw out of it or you can remove the strap entirely, and the gun is still held pretty securely. I don't think I have the camera low enough to get a proper angle, so I'll kind of do it from here. But what you're able to do is just pull it straight out and lift, and you're on target. So again, this is old school technology from the 1980s, 1970s, but this whole package is just super, super, super cool. I've debated a fair bit about what I want to do with this gun. Mechanically, I don't want to touch it. It's perfect. Ken Eversull did an amazing job building this thing when he did, when I was a child, and mechanically it's perfect. I don't need to do any changes with that. I have debated adjusting the cosmetics a little bit. Now, this is a blued gun and it does have a lot of bluing wear, but man, is it honest bluing wear. This thing was shot and shot hard and shot a lot. This thing, you know, probably took home some trophies in its lifetime. So it does have some bluing wear, which I don't necessarily want to get rid of. I like the bluing wear because it is honest bluing wear. But that type of holster is pretty rough, and you can kind of see, it may show up, that you can get scratches on it a lot. And then there's a tiny, tiny bit of surface pitting on the side plate there. So I don't know. I've debated getting the whole thing properly re-blued. We're not talking a, you know, cold blue special. We're talking sending this out to a master refinisher to have them re-blue it and get it back to just perfect condition. But I don't know if I want to sacrifice that honest holster wear. I'm not sure. We'll figure out what I want to do with that. It is only chambered in 38 special, which was the cartridge that 9.9 times out of 10 these guys were running. They weren't running these in 357 Magnum because they weren't carrying 357 Magnum. They were carrying 38 special. So it's pretty much outshot performance-wise by every like modern 9mm handgun. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to carry this thing. But man, I really want to get a proper leather shoulder holster for it, just because this thing oozes style. And that's honestly what a lot of my firearm collection is about. It's not about practicality. It's not necessarily even about historical provenance or anything like that. I do have a couple of cool, you know, provenance pieces, but it's about style. And it is really, really hard to beat the style of this revolver. Many thanks to you guys for watching. Many thanks to my subscribers on my website, Booligan Shooting Sports. We will get back to the regularly scheduled 3D printed shenanigans soon, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys this very interesting, gorgeous piece from my collection of firearms and talk to you a little bit about the history of PPC competitions and just this particular gun. Many thanks to all you guys for watching, and stay tuned. We'll have some more stuff coming next week.